The mining station's emergency beacon cut through space like a knife through silence. Deep in the Kepler Nebula, where most civilized species fear to venture, the automated distress signal pulsed with desperate urgency. The message was simple, transmitted in 17 different galactic languages. Under attack. Request immediate assistance. Civilians trapped. Commander HFY of the Centaurian Republic received the transmission first. His ship, the Stellar Grace, was the closest vessel to the distress coordinates. As a member of one of the galaxy's most advanced civilizations, HFY prided himself on following proper protocols. He forwarded the message to the Galactic Peacekeeping Council and prepared to investigate. The mining station belonged to the Vorthak, a peaceful race known for their exceptional ability to extract rare minerals from hostile environments. They had established operations in this nebula precisely because other species found it too dangerous. The dense particle clouds and electromagnetic storms made navigation treacherous, but the Vorthak's specialized technology allowed them to work safely. Or so everyone had believed. When HFY's sensors finally pierced the nebula's interference, what he saw made his blood freeze. The mining platform, normally a bustling hub of activity, was under siege by ships he didn't recognize. The attackers moved with predatory grace, their dark vessels seeming to absorb the nebula's swirling colors rather than reflect them. Unknown vessels. This is Commander HFY of the Centaurian Republic. He transmitted on all frequencies. You are attacking a civilian installation in violation of 17 galactic treaties. Cease your assault immediately. The response came not in words, but in action. 3 of the dark ships broke formation and accelerated toward the Stellar Grace with impossible speed. HFY barely had time to raise shields before energy beams struck his vessel, sending it spinning through space. His ship's AI spoke with mechanical calm. Hull breach on decks 4 through 7. Main engines offline. Life support at 60% capacity. Through the chaos, HFY managed one final transmission before his communications array went dark. He broadcast the mining station's coordinates along with a single, chilling addition: unknown hostiles. Technology superior to our own. All ships avoid this sector. But the message was already spreading across the galaxy's communication networks, carrying with it the coordinates and the desperate plea for help. Most species that received it marked the sector as dangerous and continued with their business. The galaxy was vast, and one mining station's fate seemed insignificant compared to the safety of entire civilizations. However, the message reached one group that had a very different perspective on such matters. Captain Sarah Mitchell was reviewing supply reports aboard the human vessel Indomitable when the communication arrived. The ship was part of humanity's third deep space fleet, officially tasked with exploration and peaceful contact missions. What the official records didn't mention was that the Third Fleet specialized in operating in the galaxy's most dangerous regions, places where other species refuse to go. "Captain," called out Lieutenant Rodriguez from the communication station, "we're receiving a distress signal from the Kepler Nebula. Civilian mining operation under attack." Mitchell looked up from her reports. "How far out are we?" 18 hours at maximum burn. "Any other responders?" Rodriguez checked his displays. "Negative, ma'am. Looks like every other fleet is giving the sector a wide berth. There are reports of some kind of unknown hostiles with superior technology." The bridge fell quiet. Every human officer present understood what those words meant. Throughout their short time in galactic civilization, humans had earned a reputation for being willing to go where others wouldn't. Some alien species called it foolishness. Others called it madness. Humans simply called it the right thing to do. Captain Mitchell stood from her command chair. "Rodriguez, send a message to Admiral Chun. Tell her we're investigating the distress call. Then, give me fleet-wide communications." "Aye, Captain." As the communication channel opened, Mitchell's voice carried to every human ship within range. "This is Captain Mitchell of the Indomitable. We have civilians under attack in the Kepler Nebula. Unknown hostiles with advanced technology. I know what you're all thinking, And you're right. This isn't our fight, and we don't owe these people anything. She paused, letting her words sink in across dozens of human vessels scattered throughout this region of space. But that's never stopped us before. Any ship that wants to help, form up on my coordinates. We leave for the nebula in 30 minutes. The response was immediate. Ship after ship acknowledged the call, from massive dreadnoughts to nimble destroyers. Even the civilian vessels offered support, though Mitchell politely declined their assistance. This was military business now. Admiral Chen's response came through on a secure channel 20 minutes later. Mitchell, you crazy fool. You know I can't officially authorize this operation. I understand, Admiral. Good. Now get going before those bastards finish whatever they're doing. And, Sarah, make sure you come back. The galaxy needs more people willing to answer distress calls. As the human fleet assembled, word of their response began spreading through galactic networks. Most species reacted with their usual mixture of admiration and bewilderment at human behavior. But some paid closer attention, recognizing that something significant was happening. The Vorthack Council, upon learning that humans were responding to their people's distress call, immediately dispatched their fastest courier ships to spread the news. The message was simple but profound. The humans were coming to help, despite having no obligation to do so. As Captain Mitchell's fleet jumped into hyperspace, heading toward an unknown enemy in one of the galaxy's most dangerous regions, they had no idea they were about to encounter something that would change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. The enemy waiting in the Kepler Nebula had systematically conquered 17 different star systems over the past century. They had never faced an opponent who charged headlong into overwhelming odds simply because someone, somewhere, needed help. They were about to learn why humans were called Deathworlders. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler Nebula like a pack of wolves scenting blood. 23 ships in total, ranging from the massive dreadnought Indomitable to sleek frigates designed for rapid strike missions. To any observer, it should have been an impressive sight, but against the enemy's overwhelming numbers, it seemed almost suicidal. Sensors are having trouble penetrating the nebula, reported Lieutenant Torres from the tactical station. The particle interference is worse than our charts indicated. Captain Mitchell studied the swirling clouds of cosmic dust and ionized gas that stretched before them. What can you tell me? I'm detecting at least 40 enemy vessels, possibly more. They're using the nebula's interference to mask their exact positions. The mining station is still there, but barely. Hull integrity is failing. Time until complete structural collapse. 6 hours, maybe less. Mitchell nodded grimly. 6 hours to fight through an enemy fleet. Rescue, however, many Vorthack civilians were still alive and somehow escape with their ships intact. She had faced worse odds before, but never this far for backup. All ships, this is Indomitable, she broadcast on the fleet channel. You've all seen the tactical analysis. Any captain who wants to withdraw has my permission to do so. No shame in recognizing when the odds are impossible. The response came from Captain Zhang of the destroyer Relentless. With respect, Captain Mitchell, we didn't come this far to turn around at the first sign of a fair fight. A chorus of agreement echoed from the other ships. Mitchell allowed herself a small smile. This was why she loved serving with humans. They understood that some things were worth fighting for, regardless of the odds. Very well. All ships, advance formation Delta 7. We're going in. As the human fleet penetrated the nebula's outer edge, the enemy ships began to react. The dark vessels moved with an unnatural coordination that spoke of either advanced AI control or a hive mind mentality. They formed up in perfect geometric patterns, creating overlapping fields of fire that would trap any conventional attack force. But the humans weren't conventional. Enemy vessels are moving to intercept, Torres reported. Their formation is flawless. I've never seen coordination like this. Flawless can be a weakness, Mitchell replied. Rigid patterns are predictable. Rodriguez, give me a channel to the mining station. Attempting contact now, Captain. Static filled the bridge speakers before a weak voice broke through. The translation software identified the speaker as Vorthak, but the strain in the voice needed no translation. This is mining supervisor Keth Mole. Is someone actually out there? This is Captain Sarah Mitchell of the human vessel Indomitable. We receive your distress call. How many survivors do you have? Humans. The surprise was evident even through the static. We have 347 people still alive. But you need to leave. These creatures, they're not like anything we've ever encountered. They destroy everything in their path. We're not leaving, Mitchell said firmly. Prepare your people for evacuation. We're coming to get you. The enemy fleet moved to intercept the humans like a closing fist. Their ships fired energy weapons that seemed to bend space itself, creating gravitational anomalies that could tear apart any vessel caught in their effect. It was technology beyond anything the galaxy had seen before, and it should have ended the battle before it truly began. But Captain Zhang had studied the enemy's firing patterns during their approach, and he noticed something others had missed. All ships, this is relentless, he broadcast. Their weapons have a 3-second charge time before firing. If we time our movements correctly, we can slip between their shots. It was insane. It required split-second timing and perfect coordination. Any mistake would result in a ship being torn apart by gravitational forces. But humans have been doing insane things for as long as anyone could remember. The frigate Defiant was the first to attempt Zhang's maneuver. Captain Kumar watched her tactical display with the intensity of a surgeon, waiting for the enemy weapon to begin its charge cycle. The moment the energy signature spiked, she ordered maximum acceleration. The Defiant shot forward like a bullet, threading the narrow gap between two enemy ships just as their weapons discharged. The gravitational beams passed harmlessly behind the frigate's engines, and Kumar found herself in the perfect position to return fire. Direct hit on enemy vessel, she reported with satisfaction. Their shields are down 40%. One by one, the human ships began exploiting this weakness. They danced between the enemy's devastating weapons like fighters dodging punches, each successful maneuver bringing them closer to the mining station. It was a deadly game that required absolute precision, but humans have been playing deadly games since they first looked up at the stars. The enemy, however, was not stupid. After losing 3 ships to human tactics, they began adapting their formations. Instead of relying solely on their powerful weapons, they started using the nebula itself as a weapon, creating artificial gravity wells that pulled human ships into dangerous proximity with cosmic debris. Their learning, Torres observed as the Indomitable barely avoided collision with a massive chunk of ionized metal. Their tactics are evolving in real time. Then, we evolve faster, Mitchell replied. All ships, abandon formation. Switch to individual attack patterns. Make yourselves unpredictable. What followed was chaos in its purest form. Human ships scattered throughout the nebula like a swarm of angry insects, each captain using their own experience and intuition to engage the enemy. There was no grand strategy, no complex battle plan, just 23 human captains doing what humans did best, adapting, improvising, and refusing to give up. The destroyer Thunderbolt used the nebula's electromagnetic storms to mask its approach, appearing behind enemy ships like a ghost before unleashing devastating broadsides. The cruiser Determination actually flew through the heart of a gravity well, using the enemy's own weapon to slingshot around and attack from an unexpected angle. But it was the crew of the frigate Audacious who pulled off the most impossible maneuver of all. When their ship was caught in a tractor beam and being pulled towards certain destruction, Captain Reyes ordered his crew to eject their entire antimatter fuel supply and detonate it manually. The explosion created a temporary hole in space-time itself, allowing the Audacious to escape while simultaneously destroying 2 enemy vessels. It was a move so desperate and dangerous that no sane species would have attempted it. But humans had stopped being sane the moment they decided to answer a distress call in the galaxy's most dangerous region. As the battle raged, The mining station continued to deteriorate. Hull plates were falling away into the nebula's swirling chaos, and entire sections of the facility were losing atmosphere. The Vorthack survivors huddled in the station's central core, listening to the sounds of battle outside, and wondering if their rescuers would arrive in time. Supervisor Keth Mole watched his instruments with growing despair. The structural integrity was failing faster than predicted. They had maybe 2 hours before complete collapse, and the humans were still fighting their way through the enemy fleet. But then something changed. The enemy ships, which had been fighting with coordinated precision, suddenly began acting erratically. Some broke formation entirely, fleeing deeper into the nebula. Others turned on their own allies, firing the devastating gravity weapons at their former companions. "What's happening out there?" one of the Vorthack engineers asked. Keth Mole studied his sensors, trying to make sense of the chaos. I think the humans are winning. The enemy's confusion stemmed from something they had never encountered before. Pure, unrelenting human stubbornness. Every time they adapted their tactics, the humans found a new way to counter them. Every time they thought they had gained the upper hand, another human ship would pull off an impossible maneuver that defied all logic and military doctrine. Commander Vexthul, leader of the enemy fleet, stared at his tactical displays in growing disbelief. His species, the Devourers, had conquered 17 star systems using their superior technology and hive mind coordination. They had never faced an enemy that refused to follow predictable patterns. Analysis, he demanded of his tactical officer. "The humans operate with no central coordination," came the reply. "Each vessel acts independently, making decisions that often contradict optimal tactical doctrine. Their captains frequently risk their entire ships for minimal tactical advantage. That should make them easy to defeat. In theory, yes. In practice, their unpredictability makes it impossible to anticipate their movements. When we adapt our formations to counter one ship's tactics, 3 others exploit the new weaknesses we've created." Vexthul's mandibles clicked in frustration. "How many ships have we lost?" 12 confirmed destroyed, 7 more heavily damaged. The humans have lost only 3 vessels. The numbers made no sense. The human fleet was outnumbered nearly 2-1, fighting in hostile territory against superior technology. By every measure of military science, they should have been annihilated within the first hour of combat. Instead, they were winning. Captain Mitchell watched the tactical display aboard the Indomitable as her fleet continued its chaotic assault. She had long since abandoned any pretense of coordinated strategy, instead trusting her captains to make the right decisions in the moment. It was a terrifying way to fight a battle, but it was working. Captain Zhang reports the Relentless is making its attack run on the mining station, Rodriguez announced. He's requesting cover fire. "All available ships support the Relentless," Mitchell ordered. "Torres, what's our status on the enemy flagship?" "The large vessel in the center of their formation? It's heavily shielded, but Captain Kumar thinks she's found a weakness in their power distribution grid." Mitchell nodded. "The enemy flagship was the key to this battle. Take it out, and the rest of their fleet would likely scatter. Tell Kumar she has my permission to try whatever crazy plan she's cooking up." Aboard the frigate Defiant, Captain Kumar was indeed cooking up something crazy. She had noticed that the enemy flagship's shields fluctuated in a specific pattern, creating brief windows of vulnerability every 47 seconds. The window lasted exactly 2.3 seconds, barely enough time for a single torpedo to reach its target. But Kumar wasn't planning to fire just one torpedo. "Engineering, I need you to override the safety protocols on torpedo tubes 1 through 6, she ordered. "Ma'am, if we fire all 6 tubes simultaneously, the power drain will shut down our shields for at least 10 seconds, her engineering officer replied. "I know. Do it anyway." The Defiant accelerated toward the enemy flagship like a comet, streaking through space. Enemy ships converged on her position, recognizing the threat she posed, but Kumar's crew had timed everything perfectly. Just as the flagship's shields flickered, Just as enemy fire was about to overwhelm her vessel, Kumar gave the order. Fire everything. 6 torpedoes launched simultaneously, their combined exhaust trail lighting up the nebula like a miniature star. The power drain was exactly as predicted, leaving the Defiant defenseless for 10 agonizing seconds. But the torpedoes found their mark. The enemy flagship's hull erupted in a chain of explosions that rippled across its massive frame. Secondary detonations followed as the ship's own weapon systems overloaded. Within minutes, the vessel that had seemed invincible was breaking apart, its debris scattering through the nebula's swirling clouds. The effect on the enemy fleet was immediate and devastating. Without their flagship's coordination, the hive mind connection that made them so effective began to falter. Ships that had moved with perfect unity moments before now hesitated, uncertain, vulnerable. Captain Zhang seized the opportunity. The Relentless broke through the enemy's defensive line and reached the mining station just as another section of hull plating fell away into space. Emergency airlocks sealed automatically, but time was running out. "This is the Relentless," Zhang broadcast to the mining station. "Prepare for emergency evacuation. We're coming alongside your main docking port." "Negative," came Supervisor Keth Mole's reply. "The docking port was damaged in the first attack. We're sealed in the central core with no way out." Zhang studied the station's structure through his viewports. The Vorthak had built their mining platform to withstand the nebula's harsh conditions, but the enemy's weapons had torn through the outer hull like paper. The central core where the survivors were trapped was intact, but it was surrounded by twisted metal and exposed to the vacuum of space. "Engineering," Zhang called. "Do we have any EVA suits rated for this environment?" "Negative, sir. The nebula's electromagnetic interference would overload our standard suits within minutes." Zhang was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then he activated the ship-wide communication system. "This is the captain. I need volunteers for an extremely dangerous mission. We're going to manually cut through the station's hull to reach the survivors. The radiation exposure alone will probably kill anyone who attempts this." The response was immediate. Every member of his crew volunteered. "Sir," said Lieutenant Hayes from the communication station, "permission to point out that the mission only requires 3 people. Maybe 4 if we're being cautious." "Noted. Hayes, you're with me." "Engineering, grab your cutting tools. Marines, pick 2 of your best people." What followed was one of the most dangerous rescue operations in recorded galactic history. Zhang and his team, wearing heavily modified EVA suits that would protect them for maybe an hour, manually cut through layers of twisted metal while cosmic radiation pounded their bodies and enemy ships fired at anything that moved. The cutting process took 47 minutes. When they finally broke through to the central core, they found 347 Vorthak civilians huddled in emergency shelters, barely breathing recycled air. The evacuation took another 20 minutes, with human crew members forming a chain to pass unconscious Vorthak through the breach they had created. By the time the last survivor was aboard the Relentless, Lieutenant Hayes was showing signs of severe radiation poisoning, and Zhang could barely stand. But every civilian had been saved. All survivors aboard. Hayes reported, his voice weak but triumphant. "Ready for departure. Get us out of here," Zhang ordered. As the Relentless pulled away from the dying mining station, the remaining enemy ships made one final desperate attack. But they were too late. The human fleet had already accomplished its primary objective, and Captain Mitchell was not interested in prolonging the battle unnecessarily. "All ships, fighting withdrawal to the nebula's edge," she ordered. Mission accomplished. The retreat was as chaotic as the attack had been, with human ships covering each other's escape while still engaging enemy vessels when opportunities presented themselves. The enemy followed, but their coordination was shattered, and several of their ships collided with each other in the confusion. When a human fleet finally cleared the nebula's interference field, they found something waiting for them that made every captain's heart skip a beat. Admiral Chen's 3rd Deep Space Fleet had arrived in force. 67 ships of the line, including 2 massive dreadnoughts and a carrier loaded with fighter squadrons. The admiral had apparently decided that official authorization was less important than supporting her people. "This is Admiral Chun to all vessels," came the transmission. "Well done. Now let's finish this." But when the combined human fleet turned back toward the nebula, ready to eliminate the enemy threat permanently, they discovered something that would puzzle military historians for decades to come. The enemy ships were gone. Every last one of them had vanished into the nebula's depths, leaving behind only wreckage and the slowly dissipating energy signatures of their exotic weapons. The Devourers had learned something that day. They had encountered a species that would fight impossible odds for people they had never met, risk everything for strangers who owed them nothing, and refuse to surrender even when facing certain death. For the first time in their long history of conquest, the Devourers had met an enemy they did not understand, and that terrified them more than any weapon ever could. News of the human rescue mission spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. Within hours, every major species had received detailed reports of how 23 human vessels had fought their way through an enemy fleet twice their size to save a group of miners they had never met. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session to discuss the implications. For the first time in recorded history, an unknown enemy force with superior technology had been defeated not through superior firepower or advanced tactics, but through sheer determination and sacrifice. Ambassador Taith of the Altarian Federation stood before the assembled representatives, his crystalline voice carrying across the chamber. "Esteemed colleagues, we must address the elephant in the room. The humans have just accomplished something that should have been impossible. They have defeated an enemy that our combined fleets would not have dared to engage." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. The ambassador was not speaking of human superiority, quite the opposite. Human technology was still decades behind most galactic civilizations. Their ships were crude, their weapons primitive, their tactical doctrine seemingly non-existent. And yet they had won. "The question before us," Kaith continued, "is what this means for galactic security. The enemy fleet that attacked the Vorthak mining station represents a threat unlike any we have previously encountered. Their technology appears to be centuries ahead of our own, and their coordination suggests either artificial intelligence beyond our comprehension or a hive mind of unprecedented complexity." Representative Zalthara of the Hegemony Worlds spoke next. "With respect, Ambassador Taith, I believe you are focusing on the wrong threat. These unknown attackers fled from a single human fleet. The real question is what happens when humanity decides that other species are not worthy of their protection." The chamber fell silent. It was a fear that many species harbored, but few dared to voice. Humans had entered galactic civilization only 53 years ago, and in that short time, they had already gained a reputation for intervening in conflicts that other species preferred to ignore. Usually, this intervention took the form of humanitarian aid or peacekeeping missions. But the battle in the Kepler Nebula had demonstrated that humans were capable of far more than anyone had realized. Admiral Vorth of the Centaurian Republic, whose own commander had barely survived the initial encounter with the enemy, stood to address the chamber. "I have reviewed all available data from the battle. The human fleet displayed tactical innovation that defies conventional military doctrine. They treated each engagement as if the survival of their entire species depended on the outcome of this single battle." He activated a holographic display showing the battle's progression. "Here, you can see Captain Kumar's frigate sacrificing its shields to destroy the enemy flagship. Here, Captain Zhang's crew exposing themselves to lethal radiation to rescue civilians. And here, Captain Mitchell coordinating a fighting withdrawal while still providing cover for damaged vessels." The display showed human ships performing maneuvers that should have resulted in their destruction, taking risks that no rational commander would consider, and succeeding against impossible odds. "Every tactical analysis concludes that the human fleet should have been annihilated," Admiral Vorth continued. "Instead, they completed their mission, and inflicted significant casualties on an enemy that our own forces could not have engaged successfully. The question we must ask ourselves is not how they accomplished this, but why they were willing to attempt it in the first place. On Earth, the aftermath of the battle was being discussed in very different terms. President Martinez sat in the Oval Office with Admiral Chun, who had arrived on Earth just 6 hours after the battle's conclusion. "Sarah, you magnificent lunatic," the president said, shaking her head in a mixture of admiration and exasperation. "Do you have any idea what kind of political firestorm you've created?" "A good one, I hope," Chun replied. The galaxy needed to see that someone was willing to stand up to these attackers. The galaxy needed to see that humans are not to be trifled with, Martinez corrected, which is exactly what they saw. Half the species out there are now terrified that we'll decide they're next on our list of problems to solve. Admiral Chun leaned back in her chair. "Mr. President, with respect, that's their problem. We answered a distress call. We saved 347 lives. We drove off an enemy that was threatening civilian populations. If other species find that threatening, then maybe they need to examine their own priorities. What about casualties? 17 wounded, 3 killed in action. Lieutenant Hayes from the Relentless is still in critical condition, but the doctors think he'll recover. Captain Zhang is being treated for radiation exposure, but insists he'll be back on duty within the week." The president nodded. "And the rescued civilians?" "The Vorthat government has offered to house them on one of their colony worlds. Supervisor Keth Mole specifically requested that they be allowed to send a formal thank you to every human crew member involved in the rescue." Martinez smiled at that. "I imagine our people would appreciate the gesture." "There's something else," Chun said. "The enemy ships that fled the battle. We've been tracking their movements through hyperspace. They're not heading back to wherever they came from. They're moving toward the Galactic Rim, specifically toward the regions where human colonies are most vulnerable." The smile disappeared from the president's face. "They're coming for us. It appears so. The analysts think we hurt them badly enough that they want revenge. Or maybe they just recognize that humans represent a threat to their expansion plans. How long do we have? Best estimates put their arrival in human space at 6 to 8 weeks, assuming they don't pick up reinforcements along the way." President Martinez stood and walked to the window overlooking the White House gardens. Outside, life continued as normal. Children played on the lawn, tourists took pictures, and nobody had any idea that humanity might be facing an existential threat. What do we need? Time mostly. And allies. The other species are scared of us right now, but they're also impressed. If we can convince them that the real threat is this enemy fleet, we might be able to build the kind of coalition that could actually stop them. You think they'll help? Chun considered the question carefully. The Vorthat will help, obviously. The Centaurians might, given that their ship was attacked first. The others, it depends on whether they think the threat is real or whether they think we're exaggerating to gain political advantage. What would it take to convince them? Proof that the enemy is still out there and still dangerous. Unfortunately, that proof will probably come in the form of another attack. Meanwhile, in the depths of space between the galactic spiral arms, the surviving ships of the Devourer fleet regrouped around their mobile command base. Commander Vexthul stood before the War Council, his mandibles clicking in patterns that conveyed both frustration and determination. "The analysis is complete," he announced. "The humans possess no technology we cannot counter, no weapons we cannot surpass, no defenses we cannot penetrate. Their victory was achieved through tactics we had not previously encountered." High Commander Azkael, leader of the entire Devourer expansion force, leaned forward in his command throne. "Explain." "They fight as if death is preferable to failure. Their ship captains risk not only their own lives, but the lives of their entire crews for minimal tactical advantage. They coordinate without central control, adapt without doctrine, and persist beyond all rational limits. You make them sound invincible." "They're not invincible," Vexthul replied, "but they are unprecedented. In 3,000 years of conquest, We have never encountered a species that fights this way. Most civilizations surrender when faced with overwhelming force. Others attempt to negotiate. The humans did neither. What do you recommend? Vexthal's image shifted as he accessed the fleet's tactical database. Complete extermination. Not conquest, not absorption, not subjugation. Extermination. The humans represent a philosophy of war that could spread to other species. If that happens, our expansion will become significantly more difficult. High Commander Azkil nodded slowly. Agreed. How many ships will you need? All of them. The War Council chamber fell silent. In their long history of expansion, the Devourers had never committed their entire fleet against a single species. But then, they had never faced a species quite like humanity. Very well, SKL decided. Recall all expansion fleets from the Outer Rim. Cancel all ongoing operations. Every ship, every warrior, every weapon we possess will be directed against the human homeworld. When do we attack? 6 weeks from now. That should give us sufficient time to assemble the full fleet and plan our approach. The humans will not survive our second encounter. As the Devourer fleet began its long journey toward human space, carrying with it the combined might of the galaxy's most successful conquerors, neither side fully understood what they were about to unleash. The humans had answered a simple distress call and saved a few hundred lives. In doing so, they had attracted the attention of an enemy that had destroyed civilizations spanning thousands of worlds. But they had also caught the attention of something else. The galaxy itself, watching with growing fascination as the newest members of galactic civilization prepared to face their greatest challenge. What happened next would determine not just the fate of humanity, but the future of every species in the galaxy. Because the Devourers were no longer just an external threat. They had become a test of everything the galactic community claimed to believe about justice, cooperation, and the value of individual life. The humans had already passed that test. The question was whether anyone else would join them 5 weeks after the Kepler Nebula incident. The first alien volunteers began arriving at human space stations throughout the outer colonies. They came quietly, without fanfare or official authorization from their governments. A Centaurian cruiser docked at Titan Station with a simple message: "We wish to help." A squadron of Alterian fighters appeared at the Jupiter defense grid, their pilots requesting permission to join human patrols. Most surprising of all was the arrival of a massive Vorthack mining vessel at Earth's Luna base. When questioned about their intentions, the Vorthack captain's response was translated simply: "You saved our people. Now we save yours." Admiral Chun stood in the Luna Base Command Center, watching as ships from a dozen different species took positions alongside human vessels. It was the most diverse fleet ever assembled, and also the most desperate. Status report she requested from her aide. 47 Allied ships have joined our defensive grid. The Vorthack brought mining equipment that they're converting into orbital weapons platforms. The Centaurians have provided their most advanced sensor technology. The Altarians are sharing their shield harmonics. And the official response from their governments? Complete denial that any of this is happening. Officially, these ships are all acting independently, without authorization. Unofficially, we're receiving tactical data and supply shipment from sources that definitely don't exist. Chen nodded. It was exactly what she had expected. The galactic governments were too afraid of the Devourers to officially declare war, but they were also too aware of the threat to do nothing. So they were letting individual captains make their own choices while maintaining plausible deniability. What about Earth defenses? All civilian populations have been evacuated to the underground cities. The orbital defense platforms are at maximum readiness. The Third Fleet is positioned between Earth and the most likely approach vectors. And if that's not enough, the aide hesitated. Then we hope our message gets through to the rest of the galaxy. Chun had authorized the preparation of a final transmission to be broadcast on all galactic frequencies if Earth fell. It was humanity's last words to the stars, a declaration of what they believed and why they had fought. She hoped it would never need to be sent. Captain Mitchell stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, now serving as the flagship for the mixed human-alien fleet. Around her, crew members from a dozen different species worked side by side, their various forms of communication creating a symphony of clicks, whistles, electronic tones, and spoken words. "Captain," called Lieutenant Rodriguez, "we're receiving a transmission from the edge of the system. It's them." On screen, the main view screen flickered to life, showing the vastness of space dotted with points of light. But these weren't stars. They were ships. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands, arranged in perfect geometric formations that stretched across dozens of light minutes. "My God," whispered someone behind her. The Devourer fleet was unlike anything anyone had ever seen. Each ship was larger than a human dreadnought, their dark hulls seeming to absorb light rather than reflect it. They moved with the same unnatural coordination that had been observed at the Kepler Nebula, but now multiplied by several orders of magnitude. "Communications, open a channel to all ships," Mitchell ordered. "Channel open, Captain." Mitchell looked around her bridge, taking in the faces of humans and aliens alike, all of them preparing to face impossible odds. "This is Captain Mitchell to all vessels. You all know why you're here. You know what we're facing. Anyone who wants to leave has 30 minutes before they arrive." The response was immediate and unanimous. Not a single ship moved toward the edge of the system. "Then, let's give them a fight they'll remember," Mitchell said. The battle began at extreme range, with the Devourer fleet launching weapons that bent space-time itself, creating gravitational anomalies that could crush a ship from the inside out. The Human-Alien Alliance responded with every piece of technology they possessed, but it was immediately clear that they were outmatched. The first casualty was the Centaurian cruiser Honor's Edge. Caught in a gravity well, the ship was compressed into a sphere of twisted metal and organic matter in less than 3 seconds. But even as it died, its crew managed to launch a final spread of torpedoes that took out 2 Devourer vessels. "All ships, scatter formation," Mitchell ordered. "Don't give them concentrated targets." The mixed fleet broke apart like a swarm of insects, each ship following its own tactical doctrine. Human vessels charged directly at the enemy lines, using speed and unpredictability to avoid the devastating gravity weapons. Vorthack mining ships used their industrial equipment to create asteroid fields from space debris, forcing the Devourers to navigate around unexpected obstacles. But for every small victory, there were larger losses. The Alliance was simply outgunned, outmanned, and outmatched in every conventional measure of military strength. Captain Zhang, now commanding the heavy cruiser Defiance after the Relentless had been destroyed in a skirmish 3 days earlier, found himself facing 5 Devourer ships simultaneously. His shields were down, his weapons were nearly depleted, and his crew was running on pure adrenaline. "Sir," called his tactical officer, "we've got 1 shot left in the main gun." "Save it," Zhang replied. "We're going to ram the flagship." It was suicide, and everyone on the bridge knew it. But they also knew that the flagship was coordinating the local attack group, and its destruction might buy the rest of the fleet precious minutes. Engineering. Divert all remaining power to the engines. Communications. Give me a channel to the Indomitable. Channel open, sir. Mitchell, this is Zhang. Tell my wife I love her. And tell the galaxy the humans don't surrender. The Defiance accelerated toward the enemy flagship like a meteor, its hull glowing white-hot from the energy of its overloaded engines. Enemy fire pounded the ship's armor, but Zhang's crew held their course. At the last moment, just before impact, Zhang fired his final shot directly into the flagship's main reactor. The explosion lit up space like a miniature sun, taking out 7 Devourer ships and creating a gap in their formation that the Alliance fleet immediately exploited. But it wasn't enough. For every heroic sacrifice, for every impossible maneuver, for every moment of tactical brilliance, the mathematics of the battle remained unchanged. The Alliance was losing, and everyone knew it. That's when the reinforcements arrived. They came from everywhere at once. The official fleets of the Galactic Council, abandoning their positions throughout the galaxy to converge on Earth. Private security forces from 100 different corporations. Even merchant vessels armed with whatever weapons they could find. The transmission came from Admiral Tkaith of the Altarian Federation. This is the combined fleet of the Galactic Alliance. We are here to honor the treaty that has never been written, but has always existed, that civilized beings do not abandon each other to extinction. What followed was the largest space battle in galactic history. Over 10,000 ships from dozens of species, fighting an enemy that had conquered star systems and exterminated entire civilizations. The battle raged for 18 hours, with ships appearing and disappearing in flashes of light as hyperspace jumps brought fresh reinforcements to both sides. The turning point came when a young Vorthack engineer aboard the mining vessel Deep Digger made an observation that changed everything. The Devourer ships all operated on the same frequency, sharing information through quantum entanglement. If that frequency could be disrupted, their coordination would collapse. It's possible, the engineer reported to Captain Mitchell, but we would need to detonate every quantum core in the fleet simultaneously. The resulting quantum cascade would disrupt their network, but it would also destroy every ship within 50 light minutes. Mitchell looked around her bridge. How long would the disruption last? Long enough for any surviving ships to escape and regroup. But, Captain, there wouldn't be any surviving ships. This would be a complete sacrifice. Open a fleet-wide channel, Mitchell ordered. When every ship in the Alliance fleet was listening, Mitchell spoke the words that would be remembered for as long as civilization existed. All ships, this is Captain Mitchell. We have discovered a way to stop the enemy fleet permanently. It requires the sacrifice of every ship currently engaged. I know what I'm asking of you. I know what this means for all of our families, our species, our futures. But if we don't stop them here, they will continue their expansion until every free civilization in the galaxy has been exterminated. The response came not in words, but in actions. Every ship in the fleet began moving toward the center of the Devourer formation, their quantum cores being prepared for simultaneous detonation. The Devourers, recognizing the threat, attempted to withdraw, but they had committed too heavily to the attack. They were trapped in the system by their own overwhelming numbers. At exactly 1432 Earth Standard Time, 10,000 ships detonated their quantum cores simultaneously. The explosion was visible from other star systems. It created a quantum cascade that disrupted subspace communication throughout half the galaxy. And when the light finally faded, the Devourer fleet was gone. Every ship, every weapon, every trace of the empire that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries. All of it erased from existence by the combined sacrifice of species that had chosen to stand together against extinction. In the aftermath, as rescue ships from across the galaxy searched the debris field for survivors, they found something remarkable. Escape pods, thousands of them, launched in the final moments before the quantum detonation. Crews from dozens of species, human and alien alike, had saved each other even as their ships were destroyed. Among the survivors was Captain Sarah Mitchell, pulled from her escape pod by a Centaurian rescue vessel. When asked for her first words upon being rescued, she simply said, "We answered the call." The Devourer threat was ended, but its defeat had cost the galaxy most of its combined military strength. In the months that followed, as new ships were built and new crews were trained, something unprecedented happened. The species of the galaxy began working together not just out of necessity, but out of choice. The humans had shown them that it was possible to fight for principles rather than just survival, to risk everything for people they had never met, to answer any call for help regardless of the odds. It was a lesson the galaxy would never forget and a standard that would define interstellar civilization for generations to come. The age of isolation and self-interest was over. The age of galactic unity had begun, and it had all started with a simple distress signal from a mining station in the Kepler Nebula. The mining station's emergency beacon cut through space like a knife through silence. Deep in the Kepler Nebula, where most civilized species fear to venture, the automated distress signal pulsed with desperate urgency. The message was simple, transmitted in 17 different galactic languages, under attack. Request immediate assistance. Civilians trapped. Commander HFY of the Centaurian Republic received the transmission first. His ship, the Stellar Grace, was the closest vessel to the distress coordinates. As a member of one of the galaxy's most advanced civilizations, HFY prided himself on following proper protocols. He forwarded the message to the Galactic Peacekeeping Council and prepared to investigate. The mining station belonged to the Vorthak, a peaceful race known for their exceptional ability to extract rare minerals from hostile environments. They had established operations in this nebula precisely because other species found it too dangerous. The dense particle clouds and electromagnetic storms made navigation treacherous, but the Vorthak's specialized technology allowed them to work safely. Or so everyone had believed. When HFY's sensors finally pierced the nebula's interference, what he saw made his blood freeze. The mining platform, normally a bustling hub of activity, was under siege by ships he didn't recognize. The attackers moved with predatory grace, their dark vessels seeming to absorb the nebula's swirling colors rather than reflect them. Unknown vessels. This is Commander HFY of the Centaurian Republic. He transmitted on all frequencies. You are attacking a civilian installation in violation of 17 galactic treaties. Cease your assault immediately. The response came not in words, but in action. 3 of the dark ships broke formation and accelerated toward the Stellar Grace with impossible speed. HFY barely had time to raise shields before energy beams struck his vessel, sending it spinning through space. His ship's AI spoke with mechanical calm. Hull breach on decks 4 through 7. Main engines offline. Life support at 60% capacity. Through the chaos, HFY managed one final transmission before his communications array went dark. He broadcast the mining station's coordinates along with a single, chilling addition: unknown hostiles. Technology superior to our own. All ships avoid this sector. But the message was already spreading across the galaxy's communication networks, carrying with it the coordinates and the desperate plea for help. Most species that received it marked the sector as dangerous and continued with their business. The galaxy was vast, and one mining station's fate seemed insignificant compared to the safety of entire civilizations. However, the message reached one group that had a very different perspective on such matters. Captain Sarah Mitchell was reviewing supply reports aboard the human vessel Indomitable when the communication arrived. The ship was part of humanity's 3rd deep space fleet, officially tasked with exploration and peaceful contact missions. What the official records didn't mention was that the 3rd Fleet specialized in operating in the galaxy's most dangerous regions, places where other species refused to go. "Captain," called out Lieutenant Rodriguez from the communications station, "we're receiving a distress signal from the Kepler Nebula. Civilian mining operation under attack." Mitchell looked up from her reports. "How far out are we?" 18 hours at maximum burn. Any other responders?" Rodriguez checked his displays. "Negative, ma'am. Looks like every other fleet is giving the sector a wide berth. There are reports of some kind of unknown hostiles with superior technology." The bridge fell quiet. Every human officer present understood what those words meant. Throughout their short time in galactic civilization, humans had earned a reputation for being willing to go where others wouldn't. Some alien species called it foolishness. Others called it madness. Humans simply called it the right thing to do. Captain Mitchell stood from her command chair. "Rodriguez, send a message to Admiral Chun. Tell her we're investigating the distress call. Then, give me fleet-wide communications." "Aye, Captain." As the communication channel opened, Mitchell's voice carried to every human ship within range. "This is Captain Mitchell of the Indomitable. We have civilians under attack in the Kepler Nebula. Unknown hostiles with advanced technology. I know what you're all thinking, and you're right. This isn't our fight, and we don't owe these people anything." She paused, letting her words sink in across dozens of human vessels scattered throughout this region of space. But that's never stopped us before. Any ship that wants to help, form up on my coordinates. We leave for the nebula in 30 minutes. The response was immediate. Ship after ship acknowledged the call, from massive dreadnoughts to nimble destroyers. Even the civilian vessels offered support, though Mitchell politely declined their assistance. This was military business now. Admiral Chen's response came through on a secure channel 20 minutes later. Mitchell, you crazy fool. You know I can't officially authorize this operation. I understand, Admiral. Good. Now get going before those bastards finish whatever they're doing. And Sarah, make sure you come back. The galaxy needs more people willing to answer distress calls. As the human fleet assembled, word of their response began spreading through galactic networks. Most species reacted with their usual mixture of admiration and bewilderment at human behavior. But some paid closer attention, recognizing that something significant was happening. The Vorthack Council, upon learning that humans were responding to their people's distress call, immediately dispatched their fastest courier ships to spread the news. The message was simple but profound. The humans were coming to help, despite having no obligation to do so. As Captain Mitchell's fleet jumped into hyperspace, heading toward an unknown enemy in one of the galaxy's most dangerous regions, they had no idea they were about to encounter something that would change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. The enemy waiting in the Kepler Nebula had systematically conquered 17 different star systems over the past century. They had never faced an opponent who charged headlong into overwhelming odds simply because someone, somewhere, needed help. They were about to learn why humans were called Deathworlders.